I think Starfield is a game that has some major problems. Now, some people really love the game, some people really hate it, some people think it's just like mid, like an average game. For me, I would say, yeah, it's an average game at best. And it's due to some issues that I think the game has, and I'm going to talk about them. I haven't completed the game yet. I have no idea how far along I am in terms of the main story. I've put about 18 hours into the game so far, which 18 hours, that's long enough to complete many other games, many other better games, multiple times. So I think 18 hours is like a good enough amount of time to get an opinion on this game. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. They're going to flame me down in the comments below. Feel free to do that. Don't really care. But let's talk. So first off, I think the whole initial setup for the game, the mystery, is really poor. And this is something that's meant to really draw you into the game and get you really invested and get you thinking, like, what's this all about? You start in this mining situation and you find this bit of metal or a rock, this weird thing in this rock, and really looking at it, there's no way that's quite visible as to how that thing got in the middle of this rock in the first place. So yeah, it's a little bit weird, and then you touch it and you see this vision, and it's just like pretty much, I think, like the main character says when you talk to other characters about it, that it's lights and music. And this vision for me is just, it's nothing. It didn't draw me in at all. And the whole setup, again, finding like an artifact or something weird in space, has been done before in a much better game, Mass Effect. Now, the first mission in Mass Effect has you go down to Eden Prime to recover a Prothean artifact, and you're told that the Protheans mysteriously vanished 50,000 years ago. So there you're already being given some context about what this sort of mysterious artifact is, which serves to like enhance what you see when you interact with the Prothean artifact more. But with Starfield, yeah, it's just a random thing in a random planet. There's no build up at all to it. And the vision you see when you touch the Prothean beacon.
Shepard! No, don't touch it! Too dangerous!
Now, the vision you see in Mass Effect is really a lot smaller, a lot quicker, a lot more fragmented. But you've already been given this context that the Protheans mysteriously vanished 50,000 years ago, and you can work out from this vision, you can see some organic and inorganic stuff being fused together in what looks like to be an explosion with aliens visible in it. And when Shepard's questioned about what he saw in the vision, he says this.
I saw... I'm not sure what I saw. Death? Destruction? Nothing's really clear.
Which again adds further context to the vision and adds to the mystery as to like how the Protheans mysteriously vanished 50,000 years ago. It seems to look like they were all wiped out by something. And yeah, comparing that to Starfield and the context you're given after you see the vision, when your character says something to someone, it's lights and music, and that's what the only other character who's seen the vision in the game says as well. It's just lights and music. Lights and music doesn't really draw me into a mystery, finding out that a race was potentially wiped out by something 50,000 years ago, a race that pretty much ruled or spread out across the galaxy, is a much more like intriguing mystery, at least to me anyway. If the artifacts or whatever they are end up leading to revealing like another ancient race or a map of some sorts, so we're say taking inspiration from something like Mass Effect or No Man's Sky, then yeah, I'm going to be really disappointed because it's like not original, and those two things from, you know, Mass Effect and No Man's Sky probably aren't original anyway, but those are pretty big games, quite well known, and for Starfield just to do something which is the same will be just really disappointing. Now let's talk about the combat, and I think combat in really nearly every Bethesda game, I'd say since Oblivion, because Oblivion is where I really started to dive into Bethesda games, has always been a bit meh. I think there's been no Bethesda game that's done combat better than like any other really like big game. It's always just been a bit meh and mid and average. And for Starfield, yeah, it's just an average or below average shooter. So far in the 18 hours I've played, I've had 0 memorable engagements. The encounters you have are generally against kind of spongy enemies. I did then find like a later weapon or a better weapon that let me kill people quicker, but the mini bosses or bosses that I fought against in various locations, it's just a standard guy with a different name that'll be like double the level of what the other people were, or even just a bit higher than double. And that guy offers no extra challenge. It's just a bigger bullet sponge. Like, why can't they do anything memorable or have any unique abilities or equipment? They don't. They're just nothing. And the AI itself, really poor. Mainly like all the other Bethesda games. They don't take cover too often. They like to stand out in the open. You can kind of run up to them and just run around in circles, and they really struggle to deal with it. I also think that they've made melee combat worse than Skyrim and Oblivion and Fallout. Like, it feels less responsive and you have less options. That's what it feels like, which is really disappointing considering all the sort of experience they have in the fantasy genre. And the gunplay, it's just average stuff. Guns have very little recoil, so it's not exactly difficult to use any weapon. And I know it's meant to be an RPG where they put stats first, really, but this is a first-person shooter with RPG stuff, and I think it's really difficult to get the blend of RPG and action in this sort of context working really well. Again, I'm going to look at Mass Effect, mainly Mass Effect 2 and 3, where it's, again, a blend of action and RPG stuff. I would say it more sort of tends to go towards the action side. And I think the combat in Mass Effect, while it's a third-person sort of cover-based shooter, does a far better job than Starfield. Much better combat in that game. And that's not even taking into account the abilities you can use in Mass Effect. So, Edit and Terry here. As I was getting extra footage for this video, I did actually visit the first temple and unlock the first power. And I suppose it does give you extra options in combat. But the issues I have with combat and how the gunplay works, it still remains. It doesn't fix the gunplay at all. And in the previous Bethesda titles that actually use guns, Fallout and Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, we had VATS, which made up for the poor gunplay. It added something sort of cool and unique to the gunplay. It, like I said, it made up for it, but this game doesn't have anything like that. You just have the poor gunplay. One thing that really boggles me is that Bethesda are part of a group of studios owned by ZeniMax, right? And ZeniMax own id Software, one of the creators of like the best single-player first-person shooters we've had in a long time, Doom and Doom Eternal. They play so damn good. And also Machine Head, who created the recent Wolfenstein games. While I haven't played Youngblood and there was a lot of negativity towards that game, but the core gameplay of the Wolfenstein games, the recent ones, are so damn good. And they're all first-person shooters. Why didn't Bethesda reach out to these two studios who are part of the same group and be like, guys, can you give us a hand and help us make our first-person combat better? But no, they didn't. They stuck to this sort of so mid-tier gunplay. So with Starfield being set in space, of course, you can have a ship. And I'm going to say the ship builder is a really great feature in the game. Absolutely. Now, while I'm still really early into the game, I am a bit limited in terms of the size and sort of type of ship I can build because certain components are locked off from me. But I think the ship builder is really good. It is. And if I keep playing the game, I'm going to look forward to like bigger and more intricate ships that I can build. But using the ships in combat, it's so simplistic. It's such a shame. It's like baby's first space shooter, really. The issue I have comes down to targeting. So when you target a ship in combat, you just need to keep them within, I guess, your general view. and your shots just auto hit them. It's like you auto track them and auto hit them. Now if you compare this to, I would say generally any flight based game, whether it's in space or not, I'm going to use Star Citizen here because it's a game I've got installed and I can easily get footage for it. But when you lock onto a ship, you can see this extra little blip ahead of it, which is sort of predicting where you need to aim to hit the target because the target's moving around. So you need to shoot ahead of it so your weapons can actually travel and hit the target. And what this does is put more of a skill-based aspect into the game. You need to fly well, you need to track your target well. But comparing it to Starfield, yeah, it just does a lot of that sort of tracking and really aiming for you. It's so simplistic. I don't care about ship combat anymore. I will just fast travel around because I don't like the ship combat at all. It's just, yeah, baby's first space shooter. It's the Fisher Price of space shooters. Another issue I have, and this may sound like a strange thing, and I haven't really heard anyone talk about this, is why do I have to sort of speak to someone in, say, the lodge, travel halfway across the galaxy, do a mission over there, travel all the way back to the lodge and tell them, yeah, I've done it. Why can't I just, like, call them, use, like, space radio or space phones and tell them that, yeah, job's done, mate? Why do I have to travel all the way back and tell them that the job's been done? Do Bethesda, like, do they know that phones and VoIP exist?
Do you guys not have phones? Yeah.
Like, if you were doing your day job and you were in the office and your boss said, do this for me, and then he went home to finish working from home or whatever, you finish that job, would you then get in your car and drive to your boss's house and tell them face to face that you finished it? No, you wouldn't, right? You would send them an email. You would call him, you would send him a text. Why does this technology not exist in Starfield? When you're playing something like Cyberpunk, you can just call people on the phone or send them like pre-generated text messages to say that you've actually done what's needed. Why don't Bethesda like put this into Starfield? It baffles me. And I think part of that comes down to how Bethesda make games, right? They have a certain formula which they've pretty much stuck to since Oblivion, or I can say at least since Oblivion because that was the first Bethesda game I played. And it really feels like this formula hasn't changed that much since Oblivion or Fallout 3. And you can probably point to loads of other games that do this, where you have to go back to face and tell someone that you've done something. But Starfield is also a game about exploring the stars. But you need to keep going back to where you started, or a different planet you've already been to tell someone you've done something, when you could already be out on the fringes of where you've explored already. So then you have to go all the way back again instead of just continuing to push out. Just give us bloody like space phones or something. Come on. And I've seen on the internet people taking the mick out of the face-to-face conversations and the facial animations and how the eyes sort of barely do anything and the muscles in certain parts of the face don't contract or move when they should to make facial animations more natural. And yeah, I mean, this has been an issue with Bethesda games since probably Oblivion again. Just how are they not really pushing their technology forward more? I know they've probably made little improvements here and there, but still, it's so far behind many other games. And let's talk about the procedurally generated planet exploration. These planets that I've been to, all of them, say apart from one, are just these empty, generic sort of wastelands. There's nothing interesting about exploring them. Yes, you have these points of interest. Some points of interest can be like a unique looking thing, like a gravitational anomaly, but you don't really get any explanation about it. It's just, it's there, you've scanned it, move on. And then just countless amounts of abandoned facilities. Why are there so many abandoned facilities? I just don't get it. And yeah, these are just so generic, with generic encounters against generic space pirates or spacers or cultists. Yeah, I'm bored of planet exploration already because there's just nothing good there. I think what they should have done is got rid of the procedurally generated stuff and handcraft some unique stuff. Even make it so you could go to certain planets and land only in certain areas, but handcraft these areas to actually be interesting. I have no desire now to actually explore planets. When I land on a planet, I'm going to go to where my objective is, and that's it, because the game has nothing interesting on these planets. Another big issue I have, especially when it comes around to just navigating the game world, is that there's no local map. Right? In a game that's set quite far in the future, local maps don't exist. I mean, you can't, like now, pull out your phone, go onto Google Maps, and then you can see like your road and path layouts and where certain shops and other sort of businesses or public services are. But in the future, in Bethesda's vision of the future, nah, it's just nothing. You can't do that now. Like, what the fuck? How have Bethesda taken such a massive step back in getting rid of local maps? I don't understand it. This doesn't help the game at all in any way. It's so bad. Like, this screams like it's something that they couldn't develop, or really they didn't want to, and I have no reason as to why they wouldn't want local maps in the game. So I think maybe they just couldn't do it. Maybe it's down to the procedurally generated like exploration zones on planets, but they couldn't dynamically create a map for it, so they just have created this like nothing of a local map. It's so, oh god, it's so bad. It is the worst local map I've ever seen in any game. Ultimately though, I think the main reason why, at least for me, Starfield is such an average or below average game is that Bethesda made it. You see, Bethesda have this formula which we'll say starts back at Oblivion. I won't count Morrowind in this because the gameplay of Morrowind is, I would say, a lot more stat based compared to Oblivion, because in Oblivion if you swing your sword and you hit someone, you actually hit them, when in Morrowind you may miss them even though it looks like you've hit them, because there's a lot more stuff going on behind the scenes. And this formula they've used really has barely changed. Do you remember when Fallout 3 came out and they were like, oh, it's Oblivion but with guns? Like, yeah, they were right. And Fallout 4 was just Skyrim with guns. Bethesda stick to this formula they have, and it's something they created in 2008. And the games just feel the same. They've barely progressed, I would say. Now, formulas for some games, they do work, right? If you look at Soulsborne, and I mean Demon Souls, all the Dark Souls games, Bloodborne, Elden Ring, and you could say Sekiro, they have a certain formula, but the first one, which you could say is Demon Souls or Dark Souls, the core gameplay is damn good, right? If you play one of those two now, it's still a really good game. Bet you if you played Oblivion now, it's not going to be a good game. Certain franchises will stick to certain formulas, but they work because that franchise, its first game, had a really great like core gameplay loop. Look at Halo and Gears of War. You could look at other games that change things up, from like Dragon Age. Each of the 3 Dragon Age games are different. Dawn of War. Each of the 3 Dawn of War games are quite different. But formulas also just fail. Like Ubisoft, where they just decided to change all their games to open world games where you have to defeat enemy outposts and climb towers to reveal the map. And everyone hates, I'd say everyone, or most people hate the Ubisoft formula. I think why people haven't really talked about the Bethesda formula is because their games are so spread out, if you don't count the Skyrim re-releases. Bethesda really need to look at how they make games and try to make something that's completely different. But we know that the next game they're making, which they announced a good few years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, but they've just started making it now, Elder Scrolls 6, is going to be Starfield without guns and without planet exploration. They really need to start from the ground up and make something really different. But that's my thoughts on Starfield and Bethesda. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, give it a like, dislike if you didn't. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more.